Hello, and welcome back to my ongoing coverage of the OceanGate Titan submersible tragedy. If you follow my channel, you will know that we've now concluded our coverage of the testimonies given at the US Coast Guard's public hearing into the incident, though there was one further testimony given to the Marine Board of Investigation, conducted through a video call and made available on the US Coast Guard website. This testimony was given by Dan and Courtney Kroymann, a married couple who were mission specialists on Dive 87. Reaching almost 2 hours in length, I have split this testimony into two halves and tidied them up as best as I can. Given it is a video call, some of the MBI's mics are not the clearest, and the audio levels between each speaker was also very up and down, so I have levelled them out as best as I could. Anyway, this first half focuses on the couple's experiences with OceanGate, from their initial interest in the Titanic expedition, to eventually signing up and paying their deposit, to being aboard the Polar Prince, including when Titan's tow rope got fouled in the propeller of the support ship. In the second half, discussion will turn directly to their dive itself and their experience inside Titan, so be sure to check out part 2. But for now, let's get into this final testimony, and I will be back again at the end. As ever, thank you very much for clicking on this video, it is greatly appreciated.
This is a joint investigation with the National Transportation Safety Board. The U.S. Coast Guard is the lead in this investigation. Today is Friday, December 6, 2024. The time is 1 p.m. Eastern Time and 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're conducting an interview with Mr. and Mrs. Kroymann via Teams, and we are conducting this interview to examine the events surrounding the loss of the Titan and the crew on June 18, 2023, which occurred in the Atlantic Ocean, approximately 435 miles south of St. John's, Newfoundland in Canada. And you do not have an attorney with you, and that's fine. There's no reason in your case to have one. But what we're going to do is, if you'll introduce yourselves and spell your name for the record, and then we'll go around and we'll all introduce each of ourselves to you. So thanks again. Go ahead.
Sure. Dan Kroymann. It's DANKROYMANN.
Courtney Kroymann, COURTNEY KROYMANN.
Thank you. The Marine Board Chairman, sir.
Good afternoon, or good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Kroymann. My name is Jason Neubauer. I'm the chair of the Coast Guard Marine Board investigation into Titan, and I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
All right. My name is Keith Fawcett. That's FAWCETT, and I'm a civilian marine casualty investigator with the United States Coast Guard. Mr. Whalen.
Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Kroymann. It's good to see you again. My name is Lieutenant Commander Thomas Whalen. This is spelled WHALEN, and I'm the lead investigator for the Titan Marine Board of Investigation. Thank you for being here.
Commander Williams.
Good morning. This is Lieutenant Commander Katie Williams, spelled WILLIAMS. I am a technical advisor for the Marine Board of Investigation with my emphasis on the engineering systems.
For the NTSB.
Good morning again. This is Marcel Muse, MUISE. I'm the NTSB's investigator in charge assigned to this estimate.
And for OceanGate, we have Ms. Hubley has joined also. So if you'll start, Ms. Finger.
Hi, my name is Adriana Finger. I'm an attorney at Double Voice, and we are on behalf of OceanGate, last name Finger, FINGER. And my colleague Hillary is also on the line. I'll let her introduce herself.
As Adriana said, my name is Hillary Hubley. I'm also an attorney for OceanGate. We are here as party in interest, and my last name is HUBLEY, Hillary Hubley. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Just for the record, memory is a perishable thing. So if you want to change, modify anything you say in this interview, just contact myself or Mr. Whalen, and we will make sure that everybody on the interview understands that you want to make an addition, a change, or modification. We will produce a report of investigation. If you see that report and you have new evidence that you'd like to bring to the light after you read the report, you can notify us again and we will evaluate that evidence. And then all of our work is conducted through a big, thick manual called the Marine Safety Manual, Volume 5. And if you want more information about that, I would be happy to provide it. It explains the hows and whys of how we do our work. So I'm going to ask everybody on the call, if you're not speaking directly, if you'll silence your microphones and silence and turn off your cameras. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you both to take a moment to stand up and step back, and I'm going to swear you in. And I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand. So all of my questions, and the way we're going to do this is I'm going to have a lead interview, and that'll be Mr. Kroymann. And then after we complete my questions for a particular question for Mr. Kroymann, Mrs. Kroymann, if you have something you want to add, please just chime in when Mr. Kroymann finishes. And they relate directly to your role as a mission specialist on Dive 87, which took place in June of 2023. So we conducted a scoping interview, my colleagues and I, and in that scoping interview, you provided a wealth of information, correspondence with OceanGate, directly related to your role as a mission specialist. We have bundled that up and redacted personally identifying information, medical history, and that, phone numbers, emails, and so forth. And that redacted copy is now Coast Guard Exhibit 113, and it spans approximately 63 pages. We asked you to review it because of the redactions, and Mrs. Kroymann, you raised an issue with your astute observation regarding names. So from the Coast Guard's perspective of redacting personal identifying information, the deceased have no privilege when it comes to privacy, and that's why those names are included in the dive plans and various documents. So we did give it a couple of round turns, and if anybody finds any other unredacted information, I did review it after you bounced it back to me, so thank you for that. So what I'd like to do first, Mr. Kroymann, is to just give us a very brief thumbnail sketch of your background, who you are, and maybe why you generally were interested in an OceanGate expedition.
Yeah. I'm a software developer. I started a video game company about 9 years ago. My wife is in school was an oceanographer. She's got her degree in oceanography and always had a dream of going to the bottom of the ocean. It wasn't something that panned out as part of life, career, anything along those lines. And when my business did well enough that we had a little bit of money, you're like, hey, there's this company that is just up the road from where we live. We're 30 minutes south of where OceanGate's offices were. And we had heard through the internet that they were taking trips down to the Titanic. And we decided to go up and see their office and check out the facility. And it was sort of the one splurge that we could do. It was sort of her life dream to see the bottom of the ocean. And it wasn't the Titanic specifically, it was just the bottom of the ocean that we wanted to go see.
So, Mr. Kroymann, in your background, do you have any maritime experience, recreational boating?
Not really.
And Mrs. Kroymann, so you studied oceanography, and to do that requires, going out on oceanographic research vessels and small boats and stuff. Could you talk a little about your background in terms of as it relates to going out on the Titanic expeditions?
Yeah, I have a degree in oceanography from University of Washington, and they have a pretty great program. So I have spent time on larger vessels, the Thompson, which is a large vessel, and done some other day trips and small trips to study. I studied sediment, deep ocean sediment. So I did a lot of research in that and was on small boats for that. Dan and I are also certified divers. So, yeah, I just, we ended up having kids, and I really wanted to experience what a true 10-day trip out in like a big research expedition would be like. And so that's why it was so appealing to us.
So, Mrs. Kroymann, like you mentioned, the larger oceanographic research vessel for the University of Washington. Do you have any idea? Could you estimate about how large that vessel is?
Well, it's the Thomas G. Thompson. So it's Dan's looking it up on the internet right now. But it is a large vessel. It's 274 feet long.
Okay.
Is helpful.
According to the internet.
Yeah.
According to the internet. And it does have like places for you to sleep. And it's a fully functional research vessel that the UW has.
And we'll talk more about this later, but the small boat experience that you have in your oceanographic background, did you operate a small boat at any time?
No, it would be more like doing research as someone else was driving the boat. I was an undergrad, so I have my bachelor's, so I didn't go any further than undergrad oceanography.
So the vessel, would it be fair to say the vessel had an operator and you were just doing research work? Okay, yeah. Thank you. So, Mr. Kroymann, for you specifically, you were a mission specialist. In your own words, how would you define a mission specialist?
We were, the best way to describe it is we were a passenger, but we were operating under the idea that we were helping fund research that was otherwise hard to get funding for. It was a donation to research that came with a trip, effectively, and an opportunity to experience what it would be like to be on an expedition. I know Courtney was especially excited to actively take part in whatever we could take part in on the expedition. If there was any kind of assistance we could provide in the research, she was excited to do it. And
Mrs. Kroymann, how about your definition of a mission specialist from your perspective?
I agree with my husband. Basically, a paid passenger. I did feel like you're paying to be able to play, to be able to do the research and go on this expedition. I think I had hoped for more ability to be involved, but it was. We were basically just paying for the experience to be on the ship and get to do the dive.
Yeah.
And shifting to the word pay, Mr. Kroymann, can you talk about what you paid, how you paid it, in as much detail as possible directly for the experience to be a mission specialist in the 2023 expedition?
Yeah, it was $250,000 a person. I think we paid $50,000 up front as a deposit, and then the remainder was due a year later. We booked nearly 2 years in advance of when we went.
And your expectations for the amount of money you paid, were they specifically for a Titanic dive?
Yes. We were paying to go on an expedition to the Titanic, mainly because that was the only real thing that was being offered at the time. I know that afterward they were talking about that wasn't actually the ideal place. It was just the place that they could find enough people that would be willing to pay to fund the program, to keep the research going, to keep the development of the vessels and the business plan. And the eventual hope was that they could expand and do research in more than just going to the Titanic. But that was all that was available when we found out about them.
And Mrs. Kroymann, do you have anything to add to the payment, the idea of the payment for the mission specialist?
No, Dan explained it, and I saw that the invoice is on the list of documents. So yeah, we paid $50,000 each for a deposit, And then the rest of it was due, I think it was in January, the year that we went on our mission. And we did bank transfers because obviously, yeah, a lot of money.
So in the documentation, they called the money you paid, quote, a training and support contribution. Mr. Kroymann, would that be the way you understood it?
Yes, I mean, it's easy to look at it as the price of a ticket, but it also, I understood that we were funding the operation. We were like patrons of the arts in a sense. We were funding this dream of making it more accessible to do deep sea research, so it wasn't just a tiny sliver of humanity that gets to go do that kind of research. There's scientists that would love to, and they don't have the means to. And so it was both. It was a price of a ticket for us to go to the bottom of the ocean, and it was also helping support this business, I guess.
So Mr. Kroymann mentioned like funding the arts, and in a lot of cases, when you fund the arts, you might have a tax deductible contribution. Was the money that you paid tax deductible?
No. No.
Was OceanGate ever portrayed to you as like I'm definitely not a person that's sharp on the whole tax deductible thing, but like a 3C501 corporation or anything like that?
No,
not at all.
And then, Mr. Kroymann, what was like if there was no ability to dive, do you understand the refund policy?
Yes, the way that it was described to us, there was not a refund. We were funding the expedition, and if the expedition failed, it still was an expedition that needed to be paid for. There were ships and crew and all the equipment. What we also knew was that if it failed, we would be given the opportunity to either stay on the ship for the next expedition if there was space on the ship, and if they managed to get enough successful dives, we could go in as well, or we could come back in the future at a reduced rate. But we knew going in that it was not a guarantee, and we were not going to get a refund if the weather prevented a dive or something happened.
So, Mrs. Kroymann, in particular, as a mission specialist, Mr. Kroymann said you were eager to participate, in support, in a support role. And in the Coast Guard Exhibit 113 on page 7, it discusses that you were listed in the dinghy deck support crew. Can you talk about that?
Yes, that would have been
page 7.
Yeah, I believe it's 7.
I don't think it's on 7. It's probably in the dive sides.
Page 7 of the PDF.
Yes. Just to refresh your memory, in the scoping interview, you said that I believe you said something about you helped, tie up the dinghy and do all that.
The ropes. Yeah. So if you wanted to participate, you could help out on the deck. I did say in the scoping interview that I felt we did not have enough training, but I am listed there as one of the people that would help with the ropes. So when the dinghies would come in, they'd throw the rope, and we had to grab it and do I don't know what it's called, and connect it to the ship. See, like I said, there wasn't a lot of training. But yeah, they did want us on the deck to help with that. There wasn't, in my personal opinion,
They didn't have enough staff.
There wasn't staff there, yeah. So we needed to help, right?
Yeah.
So we would help with the ropes with that.
And then focusing on that, continuing your story, focusing on that, did someone train you for that role?
I would not call it training. Yes, there was a person that showed us quickly how to do it, but it was not enough that I felt comfortable doing it There were several other mission specialists or people on deck that had more experience, and I definitely let them do it and did not do things I felt uncomfortable doing. Because it was a very quick lesson. In the scoping interview, I did mention at the end of our mission, I spoke with people at OceanGate and told them that they need to do more training for their mission specialists, because I felt like it was really lacking and we had no idea what we were doing on the deck. So,
Could you elaborate a little on not enough staff?
Well, it just felt like once all the jobs are given out, there were people in the dinghies, there were people on the platform, there were people running all the things, and there was maybe one OceanGate staff that was on the deck or a volunteer, and then it was basically the mission specialists. Would you elaborate with me on that?
I think that they were staffed for the way it worked in previous years, where the sub was on the deck of the ship and it didn't require dinghies with people driving them and crews stuck out on the platform. It consumed more people, more personnel to do it the way it was done that year, where they had to be towed behind the ship. And I think they just didn't have enough staff to make that really smooth. They seemed shorthanded.
And Mr. Kroymann, so your wife described her support role as a mission specialist. Did you perform any support roles as a mission specialist to support the operation?
Not really anything more than what she described, because it was the sub was out on the platform. It wasn't accessible really, and there wasn't an easy opportunity to do any kind of to assist in anything. Had it been on the deck of the ship, we might have helped go, check the wiring for the cameras or whatever needed to be done. But because it was out on the platform and you needed to get into a survival suit and get on the dinghy and drive out there, it was just it wasn't something that I really wanted to go assist with.
And you mentioned the vessel and the Lars platform with the Titan on it. Mr. Kroymann, did anybody explain why they shifted from the Horizon Arctic, which was the previous dive support vessel, where they could put the Titan on the stern, versus shifting over to the Polar Prince? Did anybody explain that to you, why that occurred?
Yeah, what was told to us was that they were unable to rent the Horizon because oil and gas exploration had really shot up, and the cost to rent the ship, they were just outbid by oil and gas exploration companies that could pay far more money than they could pay. And so they were sort of relegated to the Polar Prince, which was not their first choice of ship. And they were told originally that they would be able to get a crane installed on the deck of the ship that would have enough lift capacity to pick the sub up and put it on. And then that didn't happen. And so they kind of scrambled and went with the alternate plan of towing it behind the ship.
Mrs. Kroymann, did you hear anything else why they went from the more capable vessel to the Polar Prince?
No, that was what we were explained. I can't remember exactly when we were told that, but it was before we were in Newfoundland. It was maybe a couple months before.
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, before mission 1.
Okay.
I'm going to take a moment to share a screen. Give me 1 second. So this is it should pop up on your screen. This is Coast Guard Exhibit 029, and it lists a bunch of duties that and I put the circle around it for emphasis. They talked about communication liaison, tracking, clearing tasks, cleaning tasks inside and outside the sub, charging sub batteries and air supplies, comping oil-filled housings, variety of documentation tasks, video review and notation, and then other tasks deemed as appropriate by OceanGate manual. Did you do any of those things? I realized that you.
No.
We didn't, and again, I think it was largely because the sub was not readily accessible. I think if it had been on the deck of the ship, changing batteries and air supplies and things like that is for sure something that we would have been assisting with. And we also didn't do any of the video review and notation because there were no successful dives that had videos to review and do notation of. But yeah, we didn't, none of those tasks were really things. I think if we had said, hey, I'd really like to go out to the platform and assist with XYZ, that they would have said, okay, great, let's get you suited up. We'll show you what to do and how to get out there. It just wasn't something that was appealing to do.
We also weren't trained to do it, and
Yeah.
I don't feel like we were given any training to feel comfortable enough to do it.
Yeah, I don't think it would. I did not want to do it because I didn't feel safe doing that.
And I want to shift gears. So I'm going to read it just for ease. I'm going to take that down. So in Coast Guard 113, there is a mission specialist crew responsibility, and I think that's on page 7.
Yes.
Mhm.
And it says, I understand that as a member of the expedition crew will need to complete substantial training prior to the start of the expedition, up to 14 hours, depending on prior maritime experience. This training includes basic seamanship, submersible operations, emergency procedures, communication, navigation, and submersible systems and controls. Stopping right there, Mr. Kroymann, did you receive any training similar to that?
No.
And then, Mrs. Kroymann, were you aware of like videos called First Fridays that might be available to you?
Yes, yes, I was available. I knew about the videos. I watched all of them. And just to comment on that paragraph, if that's okay. When I signed up to be a mission specialist, I was really excited about all the training. I thought that we were going to be going up to Everett and learning a bunch and training and helping, and that never happened. Never, ever happened.
Yeah.
And then, Mr. Kroymann, were you aware of anybody that was on the expedition with you? You know, it's one thing to get training. It's another thing to document training. Did any of the other mission specialists directly say to you, hey, I completed seamanship training or communications training, and, I got documented in some manner?
I don't think so.
I think no, there were some mission specialists that had more experience, maybe not on ships, but with like technology and things, and they used their skills. But not that I'm aware of anyone that we knew got specialized training.
Yeah.
Did anybody require you to verify that you watched like the First Friday
No.
videos?
No.
And then continuing the end of that paragraph, it says for clients with extensive experience or in special situations, this requirement may be waived by OceanGate expeditions. Did anybody tell you that your training requirements had been waived,
No.
Mr. Kroymann?
No.
And then Mrs. Kroymann?
No.
And then it ends with, I understand that I may be required to provide or obtain a U.S. Coast Guard merchant mariner credential or a similar maritime equivalent. Mr. Kroymann, did anybody ever speak to you about getting a Coast Guard credential or an equivalent?
They did when the very first time that we were talking to them when we were signing up for the expedition, they talked about getting a merchant mariner credential, and we started the process. What was the name of it?
We got the Twitch cards.
TWIC card.
Yeah.
And
Transportation.
that was the extent of where we went, and nothing was ever said of it from that point forward. There was no mention of it given after that.
And Mrs. Kroymann, this is a little off my plan here, but you toured the OceanGate facilities, didn't you?
Yes, I did several times.
And did you see like the work being done on the Titan?
I definitely saw a workspace with people doing work on submersibles. They had is it the inner part of it out? They had like two of those, right? The two of the inserts. I did not see people directly working on the Titan, but there were definitely people. It looked like a working workshop.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we sat in the Titan one time inside, and then I also sat inside of it once when I was in the parking lot in Everett as well.
And Mr. Kroymann, what was your just overall impression of the facility and the workspace, cleanliness, orderliness? If you have an opinion about what you physically witnessed.
I don't have a really strong memory of it. What I do remember is that it felt like a startup versus an established corporate company. It had that sort of scrappy feel to it. It was a fairly small facility, and yeah, that's the best way I can describe it.
Can I add? Because I do remember. I thought it was impressive. It did look like a startup in terms of it wasn't, fancy offices or anything, but it looked to me like a place where innovation was happening and people were creating interesting things. And as a former student, it excited me to be able to see that. And when we signed up in 21, I was really hopeful that we would get to be involved with, getting it ready to go to St. John's and that type of stuff. I even helped do they had a school program for a while teaching about educating students about ocean stuff. And I did a couple presentations for them. I was super excited to be involved with them, and it just kind of dropped off before we actually sailed. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you document you may not have seen. It's Coast Guard Exhibit 009, which is a job description of a mission specialist, which has been used in the hearing. It discusses, and I'll just make it brief, mission specialist's color vision. Mr. Kroymann, did anybody ask you about your color vision?
I don't remember. I don't think so, but I don't remember.
And Mrs. Kroymann?
No, although I don't remember what was on the medical form. So it may have been listed there, but I do not remember verbally being asked about my color vision or any of that stuff.
And we'll talk about the medical questionnaire in a minute, but it discusses your hearing, your hearing capabilities, and it talks about, communicating in English, and a mission specialist must be capable of reading and speaking English well enough to read, understand. Did anybody, Mr. Kroymann, come to you and talk about your ability to hear, listen, and so forth?
No.
How about you, Ms. Kroymann?
No, but we did an in-person interview with Stockton, sat in the Titan as he explained everything. So obviously they would have known that we can understand and speak English. We had a multiple hour conversation at the site.
So when you say the site, are you talking about in Everett, Washington?
Yes, in Everett, yes.
Okay, thank you. And now we talk about pull that down. We talk about the medical questionnaire. So you received, Mr. Kroymann, the medical questionnaire, and you self-certified the answers to the questions in the questionnaire. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And same for you, Mrs. Kroymann?
Yes.
And so the questionnaire asked you about your physical I'll say your medical fitness for different things, and there was some areas that discussed medications that you took. There were areas that all self-certified. When you got on board the Polar Prince, as I understand it, there were at least one medical doctor aboard.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So yes, there was a medical doctor, Mr. Kroymann.
Yeah.
Did the medical doctor? Excuse me.
I think there were two actually, because they were overlapping on their stint.
So, Mr. Kroymann, did the medical doctor sit down with you when you got aboard the vessel and validate the information that you provided in the self-certifying questionnaire?
I don't think so. Did anything happen that first night?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So, Mrs. Kroymann,
no. No. The only thing that we were told was that if we have seasickness, that they had seasickness pills for us, but there was no sit down and go over our medical stuff and make sure that, that there was no.
So in the documentation provided by OceanGate, they were saying that there was alcohol on board the vessel. Did you see anyone on board the vessel?
No, in fact, I think
drink?
we were
No
told the opposite.
alcohol.
We were told that the ship was dry, that there was no alcohol at all on the ship. And that's what my experience was. I never saw alcohol anywhere.
Mhm.
And Mrs. Kroymann, you?
No.
Okay.
I was told it was a dry ship.
Yeah.
So I might have missed something, Mr. Kroymann, but in the information that you provided in the documentation that was sent to you by OceanGate, and it was a substantial amount of information, over the months leading up to the expedition. Did they send you a waiver of liability release?
I don't.
I mean,
Probably. I don't know.
I emailed everything that they sent me. So,
Yeah, if it was.
Do you recall?
I don't remember. No.
And Mrs. Kroymann?
I filled out every form they emailed me, and often reminded Dan to fill them out. And I everything that I had in my email I sent over. So I know we signed a contract which also had liability when we signed up for it.
Yeah.
So the liability release form, and perhaps Lieutenant Commander Whalen can find that, and we'll display that to you for the most recent expedition. But it talked about the experimental, this might refresh your memory, Mr. Kroymann. It talked about the experimental nature of the submersible voyage, that it was new technology, that the loss of pressure or could result in catastrophic failure, which was inherently very dangerous to life. It talked about age, like that you're going to be 18 years old by the time you sign this. Does that help refresh your memory, Mr. Kroymann?
I definitely remember that when we got on the ship, one of the first things we had to do, I think that first night that we were on the ship, was read and sign a document that sounded just like that. And I think we also had seen a similar document, 2 years earlier when we signed up. I for sure was aware that it was an experimental sub, that there was, lots of risk of catastrophic failure and death, and that was not hidden at all. We knew that.
And just to be clear, Mr. Kroymann, when you said to your recollection, I believe you said that you signed it when you got on the ship, the night you got on the ship. So was the ship underway?
Yes.
Had we left that?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yes,
Okay.
we had left. Yeah, it was done at the 7 p.m. They have meetings at 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. every morning, and they did it at the 7 p.m. meeting.
Yeah.
We were aware, though, before we got on the ship that we were going to sign it on the ship. And so it was almost kind of like, we got to sign our waivers.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I feel like I remember somebody possibly stopped and saying, if you don't want to sign it, that's fine. You just won't die if you'll stay on the ship.
And now I'd like to turn to the actual expedition that you were on and leading up to Dive 87. And Mrs. Kroymann, how did OceanGate identify the dates that you were going to go? Like, talk about that process, if you would, a little bit.
So it was based on you got to pick which mission you wanted to do based on when you booked. So we booked very far in advance. So once the dates were released, they emailed me and asked me, here's the dates. When would you like to come? And so I looked at our calendar, and there were 5 sessions, five dates. And I didn't want to go first because I figured I'd let a few dives go before, and I didn't want to go last. so I chose the 4th mission. It also fit with like the kids' school schedule and stuff. And then I told them, that we wanted that date, and they booked us that way. You were always booked with like your rankings. So since we booked so early, we were like, dive team 1 because we had booked the longest.
And so in general, the communications that you had, and I'll stay with you, Mrs. Kroymann, related to the email correspondence with OceanGate, how was that? Was that satisfactory from your perspective?
I would say satisfactory. Email was the primary communication. When we booked, they had a woman that was in charge of mission specialists, and I feel like I got a lot more communication then. That would have been 21 to 22, and then she left the company, and the communication did go down. I don't feel like I got as many emails or information, but before the mission started, we got all the medical forms and stuff. But yeah, it was, I would say, satisfactory, especially for the amount of money we paid.
Mr. Kroymann?
Yeah, I think, as she said, initially when we signed up, there was a lot of communication back and forth. And then in the year-ish leading up to the expedition, the communication was pretty sparse. And I, learned later that they just didn't have a person whose full-time job was communicating with the mission specialists. So it was sort of a background task for people at the company.
And so now, Mr. Kroymann, we're heading out of St. John's on June 7th, 2023, and you're heading out to the Titanic site, and they're towing the Lars platform astern, and they have the Titan on it. Could you talk about the voyage out to the Titanic site and any unusual circumstances that might have developed during the towing operation?
Yeah. So first off, we didn't actually ever go to the Titanic site. The weather over the Titanic was bad enough that they didn't want to go in that direction. So we went to the edge of the continental shelf to try. Initially, we were going to go to some island, and they couldn't get permission from Canada to do it. So we decided instead to go to the edge of the continental shelf and try to do a dive in an undersea canyon. Well, on the way there was a day when because the sub was being towed behind the ship, if they needed to do maintenance on it, they had to stop the ship and then get dinghies in the water and go out to the platform, and we couldn't keep sailing while they were doing maintenance. So there was a day while we were still in transit where we stopped and they were doing work on the sub, and the tow line drifted underneath the ship, the sport ship, and ended up getting wrapped around the propeller shaft. And they realized that, I think, after they had already started to try to move the ship, and it was tangled around the propeller, and it was a couple hours of the entire ship's crew and the OceanGate staff trying to figure out a solution, what they could do to safely get it off. They ended up having divers going under the ship and cutting it with a knife they got from the kitchen, I think. Is there anything else that happened?
Well, I was just going to state that before we got on the ship, they told us that we had about a 50% chance of making it to the Titanic because of the weather. And one mission specialist backed out then because he only wanted to go to the Titanic. Since we just wanted to see the bottom of the ocean, I was like, well, let's still go. And then they always said that if the weather was terrible over the Titanic, they would try to stay within a day's voyage away if the weather got better, which is why we ended up on the continental shelf. They just tried to keep the ship away from the really bad weather on the Titanic. No, I would say the propeller situation was
the bane.
Oh, it was so bad.
And you said so bad?
Yeah, it was, I mean, imagine being a person who, is a paying passenger, and you're being told that it's fine to tow it behind the ship. And then the like the first day you're steaming out, the rope is wrapped around the propeller, and it's like, it just was kind of a circus there for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, people didn't know what to do, and they're grabbing knives from the kitchen, and it definitely made me go, this seems like it was maybe a bad idea to tow it behind.
Yeah.
Like it just, I had a really big sense of like, wow, this is amazing, a professionalism. And then this kind of just was, I mean, I thought we were going to have to go back to St. John's.
It was very close to that being the outcome.
So let me ask you a question. There are various kind of tow lines. There's a nylon line which sinks, and then there's polypropylene, which is not generally used as tow line, but it floats on the surface. Did you see the tow line sinking below the surface of the water, Mr. Kroymann, or was it floating on the surface?
I think it floated. Yeah.
I think it floated as well. I know I can't remember the color, but I can like,
you could see it floating.
I can see it.
Yeah.
And then at any time, you know, you've brought this up before, Mr. Kroymann and Mrs. Kroymann, you know, you got the large platform with the Titan on it somewhere astern of the ship, and they're towing it. Did you ever see them while the Titan was being towed, or they stopped, where they would put a small boat in the water and just go and check to make sure the Titan was okay?
I think that sort of happened every day, just by the nature of, we would stop and they would be either going out to the Titan to do some sort of maintenance, or preparing to attempt to do a dive.
I don't think they ever intentionally stopped to check on it.
Yeah.
But we stopped every day, and there was definitely work or things done on it daily.
Yeah. There was never a day that there wasn't a crew going out to the platform.
So that concludes the first half of Dan and Courtney Kroymann's testimony. As usual with these two-part testimonies, I will save the bulk of my comments until we've seen and heard it in its entirety, though there still are a few key moments in this first half, of course, like the topic of OceanGate being understaffed emerging once again, and it was interesting to hear how they had maintained their setup from previous years, despite now having the sub launched directly in the water rather than from the support ship, which brought its own problems, including a need for more staff and making maintenance more difficult, which required the support ship to stop every time. Other topics covered, which have been highlighted before, included a lack of real training and a reduction in communication, in this instance due to a change of staff due to yet another person departing the company. We've also heard about the money strains on OceanGate by this point, which goes hand in hand with Stockton Rush's documented frustration, and in the second half of this testimony, I believe we will hear about his famous line, "I'm going to get a dive in, even if it kills me." The operations response to the tow rope becoming fouled was also interesting to hear about, described as a circus. Despite their sometimes jovial moments in this testimony, I'm sure it hit home for Mr. and Mrs. Kroymann just how lucky they actually were, and how close they were to being inside Titan for its final dive. I am working on both parts of this testimony at the same time, so we'll make sure that there's only a day or so between these parts. So, until the next video, thank you very much for watching this first half, it is greatly appreciated, and bye for now.